Hello friends, welcome back. This is part 2 of what it feels like to be on the autism spectrum. And in part 1, I talked about the physical symptoms that I have that are related to being on the autism spectrum. In part 2, I'm going to talk about what it feels like mentally and emotionally to be on the autism spectrum. Now, keep in mind, this is only my experience. I'm not speaking for everybody on the spectrum. And absolutely, the spectrum is wide. There are people who are severely impacted, and there are others who are only minimally impacted. And really today I'm just giving you my personal experience, and it's not meant to discount or minimize anybody else's experience or to put labels on anyone. I specialize in health, wellness, and mindset, particularly in helping people on the autism spectrum, like me and like you, to live happier, healthier lives. And so I appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that you'll be notified when I go live and when new videos drop. And remember, when you subscribe to a YouTube channel, it's like supporting a small business, but it doesn't cost you anything. So thank you for being here and thank you for subscribing. So what does it feel like to have autism, both in my mind and in my emotions and thoughts? And living and self-managing autism all my life. I only was just diagnosed this year and I'm in my 50s. Living and self-managing it all my life, you know something is a little bit different about you, but you don't know exactly what that is. And that's why probably the first thought that came to mind when I asked myself, how am I going to describe this to people, is the word confusion. Because so many parts of the world or parts of society don't make sense to me. And a good example of that is anytime I would be introduced into a new environment. So this was more true growing up and into and through my 20s. So take, for example, when I started chiropractic school, you're in a brand new environment in a class with 100 people and I don't know a single person. And we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Brand new experience, brand new place, not knowing anybody, and we're all getting to know each other and look to make friends. And sure enough, this experience would repeat itself in my life. Usually by about the end of the second week, friend groups had already formed. But then why didn't I fall into a friend group? And it didn't mean people weren't purposefully excluding me. Everybody was friendly with me and I felt like I was making friends. But I noticed groups had formed and I wasn't part of any of the groups. And that's one example of many times in my life. In general, even though I have a really nice core set of friends, I do wonder if my friendships are different from somebody who's not on the spectrum. Is there a closeness that other people have, people who are not neurodivergent? Is there a closeness that they experience that I don't experience? Because there probably are very few people who really know me. And I guess that boils down to, people on the autism spectrum very often are keen observers of behavior and how people navigate society. And then, beep, 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 we enter that into the program and then we act upon it and demonstrate it. So it's not as much of a natural development as it is a learned skill. And so I think that is why I will often feel like, yeah, I like a lot of people like me, I'm friendly with people, but I'm not typically in a group, in a clique. And so but also, now I'm perfectly happy with that. In my 20s, and when you're younger and you want to belong and you want to be in the crowd, whatever crowd that is, it was frustrating, it would make me sad, and I would feel confused why it wasn't happening. Also, where confusion can come in is in communication. Like it's widely known, it is said that people on the autism spectrum appreciate clear, concise communication and will often speak in clear, concise ways, which can sometimes be misinterpreted as being arrogant or rude. But if somebody doesn't say to me exactly what they want, I might not get it. It doesn't land. And I'm practicing, I try. But to me, the words, I really like ice cream, do not equal the words, can I please have ice cream? So if somebody's indirect in their communication, it might not land for me. And either I wind up confused, well, what went wrong? Where did this conversation fall apart? Or the other person is left feeling confused, defensive, hurt, whatever, because they don't understand where it went wrong. And also, related to confusion around communication comes what is the right tone? So I find I have two modes, because I don't want to offend, because I've been told being direct can be rude, especially for women. This is especially tricky for women because women are labeled bossy or aggressive and undesirable when they're direct or firm, or we're told that we're yelling when all we're doing is speaking clearly and firmly. So I could default into being a little like sweet or something, expressing some need that I have in a gentle and sweet way, and then it doesn't get heard and it doesn't get followed through. And I say it politely a second time and it doesn't get heard. And then the third time comes the explosion. Does anybody else do this? So I feel like I have two modes, and I find a hard time finding that in between. That is direct and I get heard without being offensive. Does everybody struggle with this? I mean, possibly to some degree people do, but I think that this is something felt a little bit more acutely in the autism world. And often leads to confusion because I'll wonder, what am I doing wrong? Why, when I say this nicely, is it not heard? Working on it. Another thing that I experience in my mind is it's very difficult for me not to correct something that is inaccurate or that I perceive or see as wrong. So if a picture is hanging crooked on the wall, if a mirror is hanging crooked on the wall, I want to fix that. Otherwise, I keep looking at it. If it's in my own home, that's easy enough to do. I just go up and fix it. If I'm not in my own home, it might not be perceived as polite or socially acceptable to go and fix it. Also, and this is a skill I'm learning, if somebody gives inaccurate information that's demonstrable, like inaccurate data, something that's not true, I have a very hard time not correcting it. And I'm learning, so I don't need to correct people all the time. It is perfectly fine to let something slide if it's not that big of a deal. But there's this little voice in my head that's gonna say inside, yeah, but that's wrong. Now, it's one thing to correct information and data. It's another thing, you have to be careful not to correct people's feelings or how people interpret an experience. You have to be very gentle about that, because you don't want to tell somebody that their feelings are invalid or feelings are wrong. So I do have to be very careful to hold back or censor or filter how I say if I feel it's necessary to make a correction, and learning that I don't need to correct so often. Another mental or emotional experience of autism is the emotional regulation. So I can very quickly have a flash of anger. And this, what a blessing it is to be at this point in my life where so many of these rough edges have smoothed over. But looking back, and then looking back at family members who also are on the spectrum, the anger flashes, while it might feel like it's something that I need to do or the autistic person has to do, it really does damage relationships, and it's very frightening to people on the other end. In my mind thinks, I just have this anger and I gotta get it out, and I don't care what it sounds like or what it, or how loud I'm being, but I gotta get it out, and then it will very quickly pass and smooth over. But I do implore you to put yourself in the other person's shoes, what that feels like, what that sounds like, to be on the other end of it. So these hot flashes of anger, that's something that I have had to learn to modulate. And again, I will make another video about this. Yes, you can. There are things that you can do to calm that down, to help smooth that over, and you're not being untrue to yourself. You're still acknowledging your emotions. But I will make another video, so stay tuned and subscribe so that you won't miss it, on techniques that you can do to help regulate those anger or other emotional outbursts. Okay, another mental or emotional aspect for me for being on the autism spectrum is being hyper alert. And I mentioned this in the physical, part 1 of the video series, where I talk about the physical reactions that I get being on the spectrum. But also being hyper vigilant, hyper alert, that's also a mental emotional state as well. You know, like when a motorcycle goes fast down the road, sometimes I'll jump or startle, or it'll put me in a bad mood. My nervous system, or the nervous system when you're on the spectrum, is just hardwired to be a little bit more triggered by these sensations. And so being in that fight or flight mode when you don't need to be, that's an emotional, mental aspect of being on the spectrum. And I'm going to leave you with a positive mental, emotional aspect of being on the spectrum. Maybe this is also because I have ADD, but it is incredibly exciting to have a brain and a mind that is fast, it's fluid, it's creative, it's silly, it can problem solve, it can imagine. These are really cool things, and I wouldn't ever want to lose that, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's incredibly exciting to learn something new, to go even deeper into a topic that fascinates me, to learn an explanation, to understand. These things to me make life just so incredibly fascinating, and that also is a trait of that I can give thanks for. That's part of all the things that make up Christine and all the things that make up you. That's a trait of being on the spectrum or having ADD that, frankly, I love it very much. So, my friends, you are amazing. Being on the spectrum, let's normalize that. Let's take the word disorder out of it. Yes, it can have challenges, but everybody in life has their unique set of challenges. It also has many, many blessings. And I thank you for being here, because this is a place where you can learn and grow and have more success on the spectrum, success in your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.